and evidence-based. Very much so. There's 33,000 people working in the financial services centre. There's talk of about 3,000 of those would be affected by financial transaction tax. And saying that is, I've still looked for the research and the evidence-based that this would actually affect the Irish economy that's been portrayed as it is. And I'm just wondering, the first question, and I'm going to try and keep the questions. You mentioned the possible effects of gain 163 million to 443 million in stamped current yield of stamp duties. Ireland would have to abolish it. So you're saying it's about revenue neutral. How did you come up with that?
Approximately.
How did you come up with that figure?
It was actually the Central Bank and the ESRI who did the analysis on it.
But it also says within other research documents, the EU budget would be a reduction in member states' national contribution. Is that factored in the figures you've just given us?
Sorry, can you repeat? I didn't hear you.
We would see a reduction in member states' contributions to the EU budget. So is the figure that you've given us, is that factored in?
Well,
because it's a 2/3, 1/3 split.
Yeah. So exactly. So if we were, I mean, on the yields that were thrown up by the ESRI and Central Bank, if we were gaining, or if we were handing over in the region of, we'll say, 200 to 300 million, that would come off our national contributions.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be equated into the figure you gave us here today in your presentation.
Well, maybe it hasn't been expanded enough in the presentation, but that would be the intention.
But I know, but that would be misleading then to the fact that we'd actually gain in taxation because we'd be getting a reduction to our contributions to the EU budget.
Well, it hasn't been said what the level of reduction would be. We just know there'd be a reduction.
Yeah,
well, that's what the current
I know, but
says.
I'm just saying, is it within the because one of the things that constantly hits me with when we're talking about FTT on both sides,
yeah,
we seem to get half-truths and not full pictures. You know, and that's what I want to pull out of this, because as an elected parliamentary, I want to get the actual information rather than a piece of information that suits one particular part of the argument. And that part of the argument you get to me there seems to be a partial truth, because it doesn't equate the contribution that we make to the EU and the reduction in the budget.
Well, I think that's because, as with other issues in the current proposal from the Commission, there's not enough detail in the directive.
But you didn't even mention it, that we would see a reduction. It's not even mentioned that we would see a reduction in contribution to the EU budget. So therefore, the figure there in the presentation is more than likely misleading.
Well, it wasn't intended to mislead.
Okay, now just wanted to be clear on that, because again, as I go back, this is kind of a constant thing on both sides. You know, you ask each group just having.
Well,
the FTT the FTT is portrayed as a tax as well, but is it not also a tool in encouraging growth and reducing the boom to budget cycle? And that what I mean is when it put a control into HFT's high frequency trades. So we're reducing the number of high frequency trades. It would actually reduce the damage that does on the European economy. Would that be correct? After looking at preparing your presentation, I think there's an argument
both ways, because as you saw there, I mean, trading on the secondary markets, etc., could be affected by this. We feel the repo market could be affected by this, so you have to take that into account. Will it also restrict markets because that we don't have access anymore to?
Yeah,
certain markets,
yeah,
especially repos and in derivative contracts.
But just from your experience, and if you don't want to go there, I'm fine with it. The high frequency traders, sometimes huge trades over a particular day, has massive impacts on the European economy. And in all the papers I've read, because they could be paid up to 50% tax through an FTT, because sometimes they turn over their whole book in one single day. So that would be a positive effect, and this kind of run on the market would actually decrease. Where you look at pension funds, that would be paying the kind of 0.5, and people that hold bonds and shares for up to 2 years. We're taking a long-term investment into the market, means a stable, sustainable market, rather than these HFTs, which trade massive amounts of money within a day and create sometimes panic within the market, knock on to unemployment, unsustainability. So there is a positive effect. So just in your presentation, have you equated into the high frequency trade and the positive elements within that?
Not in this presentation,
Okay.
and I would suggest that whenever you talk about panic in the market, is that not more of a regulatory matter rather than a tax matter?
Well, sometimes we would use a tax matter to control the volume of trades that's going, and sometimes people trade, and I'll let Peter go there because I'm sure he can give a lecture on how it's dealt with. The UK are saying are the ones against this, but the UK itself has an FTT.
Stamp duty, yes.
Yeah, of 0.5%, which creates about 5 billion. It is 5 billion a year, and that doesn't include derivatives. So there's not necessarily that why they say they're against it. They still actually operate in the market, and then the US security regulator also operates. That creates about $1 billion, and they operate on a basis of 0.00257. Now, when they increased that in 2010. The same arguments, they increased it from 0.0017 in 2010 to its current level. And the same arguments were given at the same time, that we hear against the FTT. But that didn't in fact happen. And then you look at the Swedish example, and this is where I'm kind of asking, is because you have the access to the information, and we get brief presentations, I wouldn't have the resources to go into such massive details. The Swedish model is normally given out of what was done in the 80s. But the Swedish model is not what's being proposed at the moment. And in fact, in the Swedish model, it allowed them people to go bypass the FTT by trading and brokers outside the country. What's normally not said is the Swedish model was actually changed then afterwards to more what we're currently proposing, and yet creates about $1 billion in revenue to the Swedish economy without really much avoidance. So what I'm trying to get in, and that's why I was worried about in the presentation you gave on the figures, that didn't give the whole view, is can you kind of give me kind of a more detailed backup on what you've given your presentation is, because I think it's only a partial presentation. So if we want to support the Minister, the role of this committee in the next year is to look seriously at the FTT. Yet we seem to be getting partial, not the whole picture from presentations. Is there a mechanism where you can facilitate this committee in trying to get a more fuller picture? As I said kind of at the beginning, research-driven, evidence-based, because even today, a little bit concerned, you're not getting the whole picture.
Okay, Ms. McAfee.
In terms of the presentation today, I think it needs to be accepted that we are one of 3 items on the table today. So, we were trying to tailor the presentation to the fact that this was not going to be the entire discussion today. So I think it's quite a detailed presentation, bearing in mind the time that we felt that we were going to be given today on this. In terms of looking for information about other countries and about impacts, etc., what information we have, we're quite willing to make available. And in fact, we could immediately make available to you the position of all 27 countries today, their up-to-date position in relation to the current proposal from the Commission. I mean, we're quite willing to make that available to you if you don't already have it.
What research have you done, independent research other than submissions, looking at from the Irish viewpoint?
It's, as I said earlier on, it's quite difficult to do research on something, if you look at the directive itself, that has so many unknowns in the directive. The draft directive, should I say, from the Commission, as currently drafted, is not clear on what is in and what is out, or even what type of institution is in or is out. So it has been difficult from the beginning, and I think the ESRI and Central Bank report highlighted that. Very difficult to carry out any kind of analysis on the impact on Ireland, or in fact on any member state, where there are so many unknowns in the directive itself.
And just a final question, have you received any papers in relation to this, and based on the information you just presented us from the Clearinghouse Group?
Have I received, sorry?
Did you receive position papers?
I've received no position papers.
Papers from the Clearinghouse Group?
No, I haven't, no.
Or the Taoiseach's office?
No, I haven't. I've been working solely just on proposals from the Commission itself.
From the Commission itself?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Please, Mr. Deputy Peter Matthews.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for coming in.